Tonight on the docket, the budget battle has taken Washington, D.C. by storm. Everyone talks about making cuts, but few are brave enough to ask for meaningful cuts. And fewer still are brave enough to slash from the third rail budget items like Medicare, Social Security, and defense. Last night on Freedom Watch, we spoke to one of those few brave individuals, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. He's proposed a $500 billion cut to the president's budget, sparing no political spending sacred cows. But as bold as that proposal is, it's simply not enough in the face of the president's red ink-laden proposals. Tonight, the federal government debt is $14 trillion. If the president gets his way, the debt will be $16.7 trillion after the end of the next fiscal year. That's slightly bigger than the entire domestic United States economy. And 1/3 of all tax dollars collected are now used to pay the interest on the debt. If nothing is done, the U.S. economy is headed for disaster, and our children will be financial slaves to the federal government. So who else will step in and fight for sound fiscal policy? Here now, the winner of last week's Conservative Political Action Conference presidential straw poll, a true titan of constitutional principles, and the proud father of last night's budget-busting senator, Texas Republican Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman Paul, welcome here.
Thank you.
I want to ask you one question about the Patriot Act before we get to all the budget and spending and what we can cut and what the sacred cows are. Were you surprised, Congressman Paul, that only 27 Republicans voted against extending the Patriot Act? I think there are 60 or 65 members of the Tea Party caucus alone. Where were the rest of them?
Well, I'm not surprised. I certainly was disappointed. I was hoping for more. You know, of the three Republicans that voted against it originally, I'm the only one in the Congress right now. So we were really hoping the Tea Party movement would really nudge us along the way. Now, we picked up, I think, 8 or 9 of the freshmen, but that's not good out of 88. So they just haven't gelled on this issue. They talk about limited government and the Constitution, but for some reason the Fourth Amendment is just not all that important to them, and they buy into this argument that, it's necessary for our security. We have to sacrifice a little bit of that freedom for our security. So I was pretty disappointed with it, yes.
Do they buy into the argument that they are there to protect the value of the dollar and to assure us of sound money? Stated differently, will the Republicans in the House give the president what he wants, or will they cut deeply and across the board like your son, Senator Rand Paul, has proposed with his $500 billion suggested budget cut?
Well, he's having a little trouble getting a lot of co-sponsors. So my bet is that it'll be better than the president's, but it's not going to do the job. The momentum is just so strong, and the special interests are so powerful. I mean, whether it's the military spending, there's one group of people there, and then there's all this domestic spending, and everybody cuts. It's the end of the world. So I'm not expecting the budget to be balanced soon. I'm expecting the financial crisis to come. I still think it's worth the fight, and it's worth making the points on what we need to do, because I think we're going to have an opportunity to decide which way this country should go, whether we should have limited government for the protection of all our liberties, or we're going to continue this idea that we have to have a police state, fight wars overseas, and have welfare here at home. And that to me is tragic. That means it will undermine what was once a great country, and we won't have the prosperity that we've enjoyed.
You talked about a fiscal crisis coming. If the Republicans in the House do not stop the president, certainly the Democrats are not going to do it, certainly the Democrats in the Senate are not going to do it, what fiscal crisis will come, and when will it come, and in what form will it come?
Well, I think it's going to be on the dollar, because since we don't pay our bills, and there's going to be a limit to how much we can borrow, so the Fed is always there to print the money. What has lulled us to sleep is the fact that the world's still been willing to take our dollars, because the other currencies are actually worse. And we have this image that we are a financial powerhouse and we have a military, and that conveys some trust into our system and into our money. But that will be lost. The dollar will be rejected. projected. Interest rates are going to go up. In the midst of all this crisis, the Fed will have to eventually change things. We will have to have some changes, and unfortunately, we'll be in the midst of a bad recession. So then we will have to get down to it. I do not believe we can sit down and logically come back, and balance budget. If they were serious, Judge, all they'd need to do is saying this is bad. So everybody, work the process. And if we come out, we're 10 or 20% over budget, cut everybody equally. Cut 10% off everybody's budget, or 15 or 20%. You can do it in 3 years, 10% every year until you get back to sanity. There is no chance in the world that that's going to happen.
Is there any indication amongst Republicans of a willingness to look seriously at the Defense Department budget? Do we need 2 wars? Do we need $700 billion a year spent by the Defense Department? Do we need 900 permanent military installations around the world? Or is the Defense Department still a sacred cow in the minds of Republican leaders in the House?
It's pretty much of a sacred cow. I think we're getting more support, and some of the freshmen will help us. But interestingly enough, Obama has asked for more money in the 12 budget than the Republicans wanted in the 11. So we keep thinking it's only the Republicans that want the warfare state and the military-industrial complex. Believe me, it's bipartisan on the military, and unfortunately, when we as Republicans get in charge, we're bipartisan too, and we hike the medical expenditures and the welfare spending and the educational expenditures. This is what precipitated the Tea Party movement. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out, because the Tea Party people only have a chance every 2 years. But I'm sure they're going to be looking carefully at some of these votes, especially the Patriot Act vote. There were a lot of people who signed petitions for us that they weren't for the Patriot Act, and here they went and voted for it.
Is there any chance that the House will simply say, no, we're turning this truck around? You can't go any farther when it comes to the authority of the government to borrow money. That's a vote that's going to come up in the next couple of weeks.
Yes. No, even if they did, how are you going to get through the Senate, and how are you going to get the president to go along with it? The House might do it and stop it, but I think the thought that there's going to be this crisis and that the world would come to an end, even though the argument is made, and it's a strong argument, pay the interest on the debt. Don't default on the obligation that we have monetarily. But I'm afraid they're going to scare everybody into it. The first thing they'll do is close down the Washington Monument, and everybody knows then the country's broke once they close down the Washington Monument.
Congressman Paul, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.
And now a congressman who refuses